Floatation.com. The history of flotation tanks.
The float tank originated from American government research to the physical origins of consciousness, the links between mind and body. In 1954, while working at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland on isolation, solitude, and confinement, Dr. John Lilly, MD, a top government neuroscientist, invented the flotation tank to maximally isolate sensory stimulation to better understand what the mind does without exterior influence. This, he discovered, gave people access to a range of higher brain functions. His ideas became the basis of flotation rest, a scientific approach to deep relaxation called restricted environmental stimulation technique. Together with his associate Dr. J. Shirley, Dr. Lilly became intrigued by the question of origins of conscious activity within the brain. The question was whether the brain needed external stimuli to keep its conscious states going. Lilly and his associates set to work trying to devise a system that would restrict environmental stimulation as much as was practical and feasible. Lilly's first float tank was in which the user was suspended upright, entirely underwater, head completely covered by an underwater breathing apparatus and mask. These first float tanks were originally referred to as isolation tanks or sensory deprivation tanks, and over the years, as Lilly continued his experiments with flotation, simply and improving the general design, he found that he could float in more relaxing supine position, rather than suspended feet downward in fresh water. Other refinements such as water heaters with thermostats sensitive enough to keep the water the perfect skin temperature, and a water filter for the reuse of Epsom salts were added over the years. You can just have one solution forever, or a year, or 3, depending on how good your filter is and how often you change it. But by the early 1970s, Lilly had perfected the flotation tank design that is in use today, and by the 1980s, it became popular. Flotation tanks were first used after World War I to treat shell-shocked soldiers. The salt contents help calm the nerves by stimulating the body's endorphins. Today, flotation tanks can be found in personal homes, in your very home. You can go to a wellness center, health spas, beauty farms, biofitness institutes, hospitals, rehabs, facilities, fitness centers, professional sports clubs, universities for super learning. Many people such as Alan Watts, Joe Rogan, Aldous Huxley, Ram Dass, E.J. Gold, Richard Feynman, they all own them, have them, use them, I'm sure many, many more. And your average human, anyone. The tank is for everyone and anyone. And it's at the price range you can afford, or at least enough that you can afford with a group of people and have a float co-op. The float tank has remained popular in European spas, though a revival is yet to be seen in the US where it all began. Now with today's stresses, diseases, and confusion in culture, there's every reason to bring back the popularity of float tanks.
Floatation.com.
Floatation.com. Floatation.com.